so glad you could join us for another episode of The Catholic View for Women, where we give you news and views from a truly Catholic perspective. Thanks for joining us. I'm Teresa Tomeo, along with Astrid Bennett Gutierrez and Janet Marana. And on this edition of The Catholic View, we're talking about preparing for marriage beyond the pre-Cana class. Boy, if this isn't something that we really need to dive into.
Oh, yes. Absolutely. And of course, I know, Teresa, we've spoken about our prep back in the day.
Which wasn't much.
Wasn't much. It was like very short change. For me, it was just one Saturday afternoon. You know, that was it, a few hours. And when you think about that, you know, the rest of your life being with someone, and this is a couple of hours preparation, it's anemic at best. And it's just, we really have to do more. When you think about how much time and trouble goes into worrying about all the other details of a wedding, right? From the time the couple gets engaged, it's almost like the train leaves the station and where's the venue, the flowers, the music, the dress, the bridal party, all this stuff kind of encompasses them. And they're not working on what they should be working on as much as they should, which is their relationship with the person they're about to want to spend the rest of their life with.
Well, it's interesting. My husband and I, when we give our reversion testimony and the healing of our marriage, Dominic talks about the preparation that it took for him to become a deacon. 5 years, okay, in seminary, and also formation. He had to take the actual theological classes and then go through the diaconate formation process. And my husband is an electrical engineer, so not only for a religious vocation, but for a secular vocation or job or career, all the education he had to go through to become an electrical engineer, right, at college, at the undergrad level, then to pass the state exam to get his engineering license, to be licensed by the state, and then the continuing education credits that he had to take as an engineer. And this happens in other fields too, in education, as you know, because you're a teacher.
Sure, I had to get my
also in medicine, if you look at nursing and doctors. So in every other area of a vocation of any kind, not just religious, there's all kinds of prep that goes into it. Exactly. And one of the most serious vocations in life, and of course in the Catholic Church, which is also a sacrament, is marriage. Right. And there are, as you said, very, very weak. For the most part, there are some good ones now and then. They're developing better programs, but over the years, it's really been nothing but maybe an afternoon or a few classes.
Yeah, and young people that are getting married today, I think, would do well to look not beyond their church. If they don't offer you a good program, look outside of the church. Wonderful marriage prep programs that you can do together. Read, study, meet with a priest, do things on your own proactively, so that you can foresee the pitfalls. I mean, somebody that sees the marriage breakup rate, you can foresee that. I think you should do your own homework and be
even
proactive.
Check with the diocese. If you don't have it at your parish, ask for it, and as you said, to really investigate, because it's so important.
Well, you know, Teresa, when I was out visiting with you in Michigan, we had the opportunity to sit down and talk to your pastor, Monsignor Bugarin, who, besides being the pastor, is also working with the Archdiocese on tribunal and other things. Right. But we asked him, tell us about your experience as a pastor dealing with couples preparing for marriage. And I think he gave us some really good advice.
Great examples and some stories too.
So let's see what Monsignor had to say.
As a pastor, it's amazing when a young couple comes to me for marriage preparation, they really have no understanding or clue, what the church really expects. So my very first meeting with them, it gives me an opportunity to not only fill out all the required pre-marriage forms and files, but to talk about the journey that we're going to have from the day that they meet me up until the time of their wedding. And I think it's really important to help them realize that it is a commitment, and it is things that they have to learn and study. I give my couples really two versions. We send them to a Catholic psychologist that helps with the marriage preparation, and they also have an opportunity to do an online version of it. Couples are very busy, and I try to do my best to accommodate them in their various schedules, so they have one or two ways of doing the marriage preparation. But my very first meeting with them, it's very obvious as I'm filling out all the paperwork, if they're living together. I bring that up and I talk about that. And I talk about how important it is from the time that they meet me to the time of their wedding to abstain from any sexual intimacy, to live as brother and sister if they're living together. I'm always amazed as a pastor when, all of a sudden I get the blank stares. You want us to live as brother and sister? There's no sexual intimacy? And then they get the standard talk. And I tell all of my couples, living as brother and sister, living chaste before marriage, gives them the opportunity to have a lasting insurance certificate for a lifelong marriage filled with, what God wants them to have. And I think that's so important. I think couples in today's culture has a hard time understanding this. I talk about Humanae Vitae, and I talk about the reality of what the church's teachings are and why the church teaches what, she does. But I also talk about it from a psychological standpoint too, that depending on the theorist, there are several levels of growth in a human relationship. And you can't go from, the first encounter with each other to sexual intimacy, without really building a lasting relationship with one another. And that's why the church teaches what she teaches. You put somebody on a major road. I always use this example. You take a 15, 16-year-old who just got his driver's license, and he thinks or she thinks that, they can conquer the world and they can drive everywhere and handle a big car and handle, rush hour traffic. But if it's their first time driving and you put them on a major freeway and, you tell them to go from here to another city 2 hours away in the middle of, rush hour with a huge car, whatever the case may be, they're not going to be able to deal with all the ramifications and the experiences. So they have to learn that. And the same thing is building a relationship with each other. And couples also have to understand that this is a spiritual commitment. There's a spiritual preparation. And I also make sure as a pastor that I do the best I can to help them grow in their relationship with God. I want to see them in church. I want to see them celebrating being present for the celebrations of the Eucharist. I want to see them participating in the life of the parish. And couples will say, we're too busy, we're doing this, we're doing that. But if they really want a spiritually based wedding and a spiritually based celebration of the sacrament of marriage, it's going to last a lifetime. They themselves have to work on their own spiritual development and their own relationship with God. They do that. They learn about why the church teaches what she teaches about Humanae Vitae and the sacrament of marriage. They'll be set up for a lifetime of a beautiful relationship with one another. I have two examples that I share with a lot of couples. One is a couple who they had planned their wedding. They were both accountants, and their wedding was a week away. And I'll never forget this experience. I was sitting in a parking lot, and my phone rang, and I answered the phone. And I couldn't even understand who was at the other end. They were both crying. And when I finally found out it was the couple who was about to be married, I said, what's going on? And they told me that they made a decision to cancel their wedding. And I asked, why? What happened? And they came to the realization, it was a profound thing. They said, we know each other very, very, very well. And then there was this pause, but only in bed. And, they came to the realization, the very reason why we tell couples to live as brother and sister beforehand is, as lasting relationship, and I always call it the greatest insurance certificate possible for a lasting marriage. They didn't listen to what we had to say. And the advice of the church, I always say, the church has been doing this for thousands of years. There's some great wisdom in that. You don't just, give way to the culture of the day. Listen to what this advice has been from ages and centuries. And when they finally came to that realization, I was so happy for them. I remember I even had a papal blessing ready to go. And I folded it up, tore it up, and it was very unfortunate because the marriage never took place. But it is fortunate from another standpoint that, they came to the realization that they were not ready for marriage. And I know the couple, they got married to other people down the road, so, it was a profound moment for them. Another example I use is a couple that I was preparing for marriage, and in the midst of the conversation, something came up that I was very uncomfortable with. And there was just some things that were going on in their relationship that I knew in my heart that they shouldn't get married in the church. And I remember having a conversation with my pastor at the time. I was an associate, and my pastor gave me some advice. He says, if you feel very strong about that, and you know in your heart, that they shouldn't get married, bring it up, talk to them about it. And I geared myself up for this conversation, and I was very nervous, and I was a newly ordained priest, and thinking, oh my gosh, this couple's gonna think I'm crazy, and they're just gonna go off and leave and all that stuff. So I sat this couple down, and I shared with them my concerns. I shared with them why I don't believe that they should be getting married. And there was this pause, and I was waiting for, the 1-2 punch, and all of a sudden they both started crying. And I said, all right, I was anticipating that reaction. And all of a sudden they both started saying, thank you. And I stopped, and I leaned forward and said, thank you. And they finally said, yeah, we didn't know how to get out of it. Mom and Dad had already paid for everything. Everyone had their expectations. And we ourselves don't want to get married. And so thank you for challenging us and helping us on that journey. And I'm getting chills even thinking about it. It's again a very profound moment when a couple comes to the realization, and it's a sad moment, but a happy moment from the standpoint that they knew and know that this commitment is something that they need to walk away from. And sometimes we put so much pressure on these young couples, with the cost of the wedding and all the preparations, and it becomes mom and dad's wedding sometimes rather than the kids' weddings, that, they feel boxed in. And so I was happy to help them.
Two powerful stories, really
yes,
powerful
amazing.
stories.
And I remember when Monsignor was telling us those stories, and you and I, our reaction was like, he actually saved them from divorce.
Both
couples
couples, right.
saved them from divorce because he had the courage to be honest with them. And I just said, boy, Monsignor, I wish there were more priests around the country.
I was just going to say that the importance of having
good
direction, a good priest or a good deacon to lead you, a good religious to lead you down the path to say, you know what, this is serious, and it's not just about saying yes to the dress, or the other reality shows that concentrate on the reception and the biggest cake and the biggest menu and the best honeymoon, whatever. This is serious stuff. This is a lifetime commitment, or it's supposed to be a lifetime commitment.
And this priest is really fulfilling his role as a spiritual father, caring for their souls, their eternity. And the beautiful thing is all these couples ended up marrying other people. So, not only did they prevent this situation from being a catastrophe, they went on to find their true spouse and hopefully having good, solid marriages as a result.
I thought it was interesting that one couple, the second example he gave, where he was talking about the parents were pressuring the couple to get married.
Right.
This could be a wake-up call for parents to think about, are they putting too much pressure on their children to be married? Are they living through their kids? And even if they're not, and they're trying to be good parents and do the right thing, if that's the case, if you really care about your kids, are you making sure that your son or daughter are getting the proper pre-Cana, are getting proper marriage prep?
Well, and like he said, they were afraid to tell their parents because of the monetary investment that had been made already. I'm sure, by that time, all this money was put down on the venue, and all these contracts were written for all the other people involved, and they didn't have the courage to go to their parents and say, we realize we're making a mistake.
And the wedding industry, it's just so, it's just really consumerism. We get so focused on the ceremony, on the fun, on the details, and of course there's people making a lot of money off of this. So, but to understand that those things are decorations. The real important thing is the sacrament, the commitment between two people.
That's right.
These two people, well, two families too, but it's two people primarily.
Do you remember there was a billboard campaign that was very popular years ago, and a Christian, donated all this money for these billboards to make these very beautiful statements about getting God back in your life, and one of them was about marriage. And for years, this was up along, I think it was I-75 in Michigan, or maybe I-94 coming out of Detroit Metropolitan Airport, and all the traveling I do, I used to see it quite often. And it said, "Love the wedding, now invite me to the marriage, signed God."
Right.
Isn't that great?
Yeah. That is beautiful. And something, it's just the way even families treat weddings. Of course, all three of my daughters got married, and the list of people that were invited to the wedding, I always find it very sad that the amount of people that come to the church compared to the venue.
Yeah, they just show up for the champagne.
So many people come later, like you said, for the champagne, the dancing, and the party, but they're not there for the marriage,
to witness,
to
pray
witness
for
the marriage, to be part of that. And I'll tell you, when I get an invitation for a wedding, I absolutely make sure I go to the ceremony. To me, that's the most important part of the wedding. I wouldn't want to miss that. But there's a trend that you see, that the amount of people that come to the church compared to there was one relative on my husband's side of the family. The church looked like anemic at best, the amount of people in the church. We go into the venue, there was 300 people at this wedding. I was like, where were these people? Why weren't they witnessing the beautiful? And they were asking all of us who witnessed the wedding. So how was the wedding? I said, you should have been there. It's very sad, And I think we really have to. It's almost like if you have a son or daughter and they get engaged, you have to be part of that planning. Not all the frills and all that.
But don't you think what you just said about people not showing up at the church is because of the emphasis in the culture, not on the church and on
that's the problem. That's not
the bells and whistles.
The problem.
Yeah, it's all the bells and whistles, and it's not the sacrament. They don't even see it as a sacrament in their own minds. Most people, it's like, oh, there's a sacrament involved here. They just think, and it's funny too. I can tell a funny story. One of my daughters, my daughter Kelly, at the it's a good thing I know him a lot because of Father Pavone, you know, about the marriage when they get married, and it was the craziest thing. We're at the rehearsal and he's rehearsing the vows with them, the priest, and he was not the priest who was going to marry them. He was standing in because the other guy wasn't there, and all of a sudden I go, stop, and they turn around and they go, why? What's the matter? They're going to be married in a second. Stop! Don't say another word. He was having them literally repeat the vows to each other as a practice, but if they went any further, they would have been married. And I went, time out, no, it's tomorrow, not now. But you know, it's because people don't realize in the ceremony when they're actually married, and it's an important detail that they're actually marrying themselves. The priest is just witnessing, standing in for Christ. Really, it's beautiful when you really pay attention to the ceremony and watch
it means
the
so
whole thing.
much too when you have family that's involved. I remember when my niece Jackie got married. Dominic had just been ordained. He was ordained in October of 2012, and she was married in January of 2013. And then she had her first baby, and Dominic was able to baptize little Sawyer. So, and they really wanted to be involved, and they also talked to Dominic about the marriage prep and about other issues to make sure they were properly prepared. We have to take a break. We'll continue our conversation when we come back on the importance of preparing for marriage beyond the Cana class, the pre-Cana class, and also looking at the impact of what happens when you don't have the proper marriage prep. Thanks for watching The Catholic View for Women. Don't touch that dial, as we say in TV land. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Catholic View for Women. On this episode, we're talking about the importance of proper marriage prep, preparing for marriage beyond the pre-Cana classes. You have some beautiful quotes, ladies, that you want to share with our viewers.
Right. Well, the first one, actually, Pope Francis did back on Valentine's Day, February 14, 2014, and he was addressing couples who were preparing for marriage. These were all engaged couples, and this is what the Holy Father said. Being together and knowing how to love forever is the challenge of Christian spouses. I am reminded of the miracle of the multiplication of bread. For you, the Lord can multiply your love and give it to you fresh and good every day. He has an endless supply. He gives you the love that is the foundation of your marriage, and every day He renews it, strengthens it. It makes it even greater when the family grows with children.
Aww.
And St. John Paul II in Familiaris Consortio said the following. It's beautiful. He said, willed by God in every action of creation, marriage and family are interiorly ordained to fulfillment in Christ and have need of His graces in order to be healed from the wounds of sin and restored to their beginning, that is, to full understanding and the full realization of God's plan.
Great quotes.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. I love what Pope Francis says about the multiplication of the love.
That's right.
Yeah.
And of course, that was a beautiful ceremony he did in St. Peter's Square. He had a mass, and he had all engaged couples there. And of course, good friends of mine and Father Pavone, Anthony DeStefano, and he's now married to Jordan DeStefano. They were present. That was when they had gotten engaged in Rome. Very romantic, and they were at that ceremony. Beautiful. So it was very, very beautiful. And it's a nice thing to do on Valentine's Day when the secular world is taking, engagement, love.
This last Valentine's Day, what happened? We had 50 Shades of Grey released. Thank you
exactly,
very much. Lord,
I know.
help us.
So, it's nice to see that the Holy Father is putting the proper spin on things on Valentine's Day.
Absolutely.
Well, then, of course, we recently, as you know, Astrid, I was out to see you, and we were able to interview someone else about her marriage prep. A good friend of, I think, yours, right?
Yes, Jackie Francois Angel. She's a wonderful speaker, worship leader. She plays beautiful music and composes music. She's been on Life on the Rock here at EWTN, and she's telling us her story about her courtship and how she, her experience in her pre-Cana class, which is at our parish, St. Peter Chanel, Hawaiian Gardens, is where she got married. So,
okay, so let's see what Jackie has to say.
In our marriage preparation, Bobby and I had 3 things that were very good for us. Number 1, we met with a couple at our church that we were getting married at. We met with them every couple weeks, and they talked to us about spiritual life, about very practical things like money and communication. So we had that piece of our marriage prep. But then we also had natural family planning classes, which were awesome. I think everyone, I was like, how did I not learn this stuff when I was 12? These are things as a woman, our bodies are made so beautifully. I wish I would have known this when I was 12 years old, when we're beginning to grow into ourselves as women, and to know what is going on in my body. So Bobby we took these classes together, and both of us were fascinated. Even the first class, we were fascinated about things about a woman's body that we never knew. And I had Bobby chart for me, so he would know exactly what was going on in my body. And in fact, he even knew the couple times a month that I get kind of crazy. So he'd be like, here are some chocolate and flowers. And I was like, consult the chart, Bobby. You will see that it is this time of the month, okay? And for him, that was great because he could prepare himself for craziness. But it was also great because we knew the biology of our bodies. And like, wow, our bodies are a miracle, and this is so beautiful. And he had so much respect for me as a woman, and I really respect it. I was like, God, this is so beautiful. So the NFP part, the natural family planning part, was a really amazing part of our marriage prep, because even getting married, I now know that my husband is not going to use me, that he respects in those times that maybe we are trying to avoid pregnancy, that he respects me and he is going to love me in other ways. And they use the term SPICE, right? It's an acronym for different things: the spiritual, physical, intellectual, communication, and emotional, that you love that person that way. And I knew that my husband loved all of me, again, in the crazy times and the not so crazy times, but that he wanted to love me in a way that didn't just mean sex, right? That we could be intimate in so many other ways, and that sex is the most intimate we can be, but there are other forms of intimacy. And so that was a beautiful part, was learning NFP. Another part was that Bobby and I, in our marriage prep, we decided just to do our own marriage prep, in the sense that we read a few books together. We read 3 to Get Married by Fulton Sheen, which is an amazing, I recommend this to everybody. We read the Vatican documents, Familiaris Consortio. We read on the family, and we wanted to know not only our faith, but we read these together to discuss them, about family life and about children and what we think about sex and marriage. And it was so beautiful. I mean, my husband's on the same page anyways, but we just thought, wow, the church knows what it's talking about when it comes to love, when it comes to marriage, sex, babies, family, education of your family, and really raising your kids as saints. So those 3 parts of meeting with a couple and them sharing their beautiful journey and their sacrifices and the difficulties and joys of marriage, that was awesome. Learning natural family planning, which I hadn't even heard about till I was 18 years old, and was part of my conversion. And so I'm super excited about natural family planning. But then also our own prayer together, our own study together for our future marriage.
That's incredible. We didn't talk about anything like that when we got married. When Dominic and I got married 32 years ago, we talked about the wedding, we talked about who were we inviting, we talked about the honeymoon, and then we said, okay, we've got to get this pre-Cana thing, check it off the list, because that one more thing we have to do. It was just something to do in order to be able to get married. What a great preparation.
I know, we're so blessed. She was married at my parish. We have all these wonderful blessings, priests that want everyone there to be saints, so we have that benefit. But if someone watching the show wants the same thing and maybe you don't have it in your parish, there are ways to be able to have some formation. I would say look at the wonderful resources and ministries in the church. For example, there are ministries that help couples that are in crisis, but I mean, I would imagine somebody who wants to have a good marriage would try to foresee, what are the pitfalls? How can I grow with my spouse to be saints, to have a solid marriage? And there are some that I would recommend that you take a look at, like a wonderful resource is retrovi.org, which is a wonderful way not only to use when you're in crisis, but I would say in a proactive way to take a look at what marriage really means and how to fortify your marriage.
Marriage Encounter, Engage Encounter, the Alexander House, they have a ministry for marriages in crisis, but they're also starting to work with engaged couples. Okay, we only have 1:30 left, so Janet, you've got to do the homework, so I hate to cut everybody off.
Well, this goes in line basically to what Jackie was saying, was they also did some reading and studying on their own. Okay,
Yes.
And they talked about things.
Discussed. Okay, so for homework, one of the things Jackie and Bobby read was by Bishop Fulton Sheen, 3 to Get Married. We recommend that. Also read Familiaris Consortium, which is a Vatican document on our website. We'll have a link to that. And of course, Teresa, you and Dominic have a beautiful book called Intimate Graces for Couples. It's a spiritual guide for them to use. And also the Beloved series from Augustine Institute, another great resource. And finally, to go to our website, thecatholicviewforwomen.com, sign up for our monthly e-letter, and of course, the discussion questions. But study, study, study. I mean, that was really, study and discuss was really, I think, the lesson we learned from Jackie. And just as she looks so happy and joyful.
And the fact that her husband respected her and she respected him.
Exactly.
And she really, they both embraced the beauty of the way we're designed and the dignity of the human person created in God's image, male and female. That's all the time we have left. Went by way too quickly, but again, we remind you all of the resources we mentioned and the suggestions can be found on our website, thecatholicviewforwomen.com. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.